I'd like to look at it from what I would call a modern perspective, although the word modern nowadays is a very tricky word. For those among us who are academics, we have the word modern, we have modernism, we have the postmodern, so we have postmodernism, and we have postmodernity. And a famous book written by the late lamented Frederick Jameson, Postmodernism or the Cultural Logic of Late Capitalism, opened up a Pandora's box as to what modern is. So if I were to look at the Brahmo Samaj today and all that it stands for, if I were to look at Brahmoism today, then I would obviously have to have a perspective which is relevant to today's context. In fact, when Ram Gopal, along with Darukanand, in fact, founded the Adi Brahmo Samaj, the situation was vastly different. But as Devashish pointed out in his discourse, there are some similarities too. India, if there was an India, although the concept of India actually was brought to the fore by Ram Mohan himself, if we call it India, was passing through a troubled time. And I'm sure Burunda will agree that we are not passing through very happy times either. So I take a leaf out of Devashish's book and say that it is time again for the Brahmo Samaj to take a leading role. Because it was the Brahmo Samaj and all those associated with the Brahmo Samaj, though not always, within its, periphery, who contributed to ridding our society that was ridden with superstition, with, all kinds of dogmas, exploitation, relegation of the other, again a postmodern concept, Jacques Derrida has spoken of the other. But way back in the 19th century, the Brahmo Samaj brought in the concept of the emancipation of women, about whom Rabindranath has written so widely and has been published in Prabhashi and Modern Review by none other than Ramananda Chattopadhyay, who happened to be my great-grandfather. So here also now we have a new kind of an other being selected. And religion as such is not necessarily a bad thing or something that we need to go against. But when that religion becomes a necessity, when it becomes an imposition, and when it involves the kind of rituals that the Brahmo Samaj has consistently opposed since its formation, then it becomes very difficult. So as I grew up, and I'll end with this and hand you over to Burunda again, we were never forced to do anything, to say pray in a certain way, or look upon, the Nirakar Brahmo. No. We discovered through our own readings, and that was the teaching that my mother, Parvatita, who left us this year, unfortunately in April, told us. I had occasion to meet Dr. Kalidas Nath too, before he left us in 1966. And of course his younger brother Ramchandra Rao and my aunt Shamul Srilal and her elder sister Shanti, they all had this kind of a liberal attitude and openness. And that was much better for us to actually, as Burunda has been pointing out, to adopt what is moral, if you may use the word, or what is a path in which you do not cause hurt to anyone else, that you discover for yourself. So I think one of the most important things that Brahmoism has taught me through what I have received from my elders is that you need to think it out yourself, but think deeply and not be swayed by, what you see all around you or by what someone imposes upon you.
I think to go back to modernism, I think modernism is not a word that ever applies to everything, because every day we are in a process of transition. So whatever is modern today is backdated tomorrow. So modernism is the point in transition, and every age, every year, we don't notice it, but every age we start discerning the transition prominently. Perhaps the need of the hour is not to adhere to religion sort of dogmatically, as a dogma, as a religious dogma, but to propagate a kind of ethical living. And I think that is the most important thing. That there are certain things, do's and don'ts, that leads to a lovely society, well-working, happy society. Confucius didn't teach any religion. He taught ethical living. I think Brahmo Samaj is that, because it started out as a harbinger of change. It started with women's education, with the banishing of Rosita, but a whole lot of other things that followed up. Education was part and parcel of that movement. And as Master said, the greatest way to fight, the most effective way to fight poverty is through education. So I think our forefathers were quite far-sighted in propagating education, amongst women especially. And I go back to Master again to say that when a man is literate, we have one more person in our society who is literate. But when a woman becomes literate, the entire family follows. There's a vast difference between that. And I think it's much more important to have women's education than men's. That way. Because a woman being educated, the future generation becomes educated. You never have an educated woman with illiterate children. That is not possible. So that's where I think our forefathers were quite right. They take the right track. That is one. I think the other thing that I was talking about was to get the youth to come back to not necessarily to Brahmo religion, but to a sense of purpose in public life. I mean, you can, what are we doing? I mean, the youth, unfortunately, the youth I see that you noticeable changes or exceptions, but otherwise, the youth are conspicuous by their absence. But my thing would be addressed mainly to the youth. To start, not just, what we are doing, what is the youth doing today? It has become a prey to a consumerist society. Thou shalt spend, thou shalt earn and thou shalt spend. Period, full stop. Capitalist society. Whether you need it or not is immaterial. Your wardrobes are bursting with clothes. This is consumerism. Because we have to keep the industries wild, so therefore you spend, you buy. That is it. I think the Indian way is somewhat different. We have to go back to a kind of simplicity in life and believe to live in the pleasures of going out and eating out and spending a lot of money on this or that, changing cars every 3 years. All that is keeping up with the Jonases. If that is the goal of life, then we have it. What you have is fleeting pleasures, but not happiness. No abiding happiness or peace of mind. Because what happens is, when you have this, you then find somebody else is having more of that. So you have to follow that. You have to compete all the time. Life is not competition. Life is to have an enjoyable, pleasurable, happy life. Happiness comes not only from your own pleasures, but from doing something for others. The feel-good factor that you get does not come with money. It is priceless. कोई आपन के বাইরে দাঁড়া সেটা না করলে পরে আমাকে কখনোই জীবনে সত্য উপলব্ধি হবে না, আনন্দও আসবে না। That is what I think should be done. এটা করতে গেলে পরে what we need to do is get the youth like you, literally like you. I will give my right hand to sit down with you people and work out a line whereby Brahmo Samaj is a Samaj. It's not necessarily a religion. It is, ideally speaking, a non-profit NGO organization in the true sense of the word. NGOs don't make profits. This is absolute lie. NGOs do make profit. They make a whole lot of other things which are not desirable. But let Brahmo Samaj be the true non-profit NGO. That is what. Amateur schools, when we say that, no, we have women's schools, women's colleges, etc., etc. Next to you, we have the maid servant who comes and serves to you. Every day she comes, or your driver who comes. What about their children? Are they getting properly educated? They are joining schools, but they are paying through their nose for tuitions. ক্লাসে পড়ানো হয় না, টিউশনেতে মুখস্থ করানো হয়। তো শিক্ষাটা কোথায় হচ্ছে? শিক্ষাটা হচ্ছে না। আমরা সেই শিক্ষাটা দিতে পারি। শনিবার রোববার যদি ক্লাস নেওয়া হয় ওখানে to teach them what education is. আর ইংরেজি শিখতেই হবে। ইংরেজি না শিখলে পরে পৃথিবীর সঙ্গে যোগাযোগ হবে না। ইংরেজি শিক্ষা, অঙ্ক শিক্ষা, এগুলো খুব বেসিক কতগুলো জিনিস, যেগুলো মানে এখন আর কল্পনা করা যায় না। আমি যদি কাউকে পড়ায়, সে হায়ার সেকেন্ডারি পাস করে গেছে, ক্লাস 12 পাস করে গেছে, একটা ইংরেজি লাইন বলতে পারে না। কি করে সে পাস করলো? What is our teaching method? So we teach them the basics of life. We teach them the basics of education. যেটা আজকের স্কুলে পাওয়া যাচ্ছে না, বিশেষ করে পাবলিক স্কুলে বা কর্পোরেশন যে স্কুল ক্লাস 6 পর্যন্ত চলে। We go there and we find out how the schools are not functioning. They're ghost schools. So don't say that there is education, universal education. It's not true. Education is there on paper, nowhere else. সেখানে কিন্তু আমরা আপনাকে মেন এই যে আমাদের বাড়িতে যারা কাজ করেন তাদের ছেলে মেয়েদের যদি আমরা পড়াই, টিউশনি ওদের 500 টাকা 1000 টাকা করে একটা সাবজেক্ট দিতে হয়। And they're working through day and night to provide that education. Key education was a woman there. There we can make a difference. All the other things, social movements, school, colleges, propagate that আমাদের বিভিন্ন স্কুল কলেজ ব্রাহ্ম সমাজের সঙ্গে সংশ্লিষ্ট কোকেল হতে পারে, বেতন হতে পারে। সেখান থেকে কেন মুভমেন্ট করে গ্রামে গিয়ে কাজ হচ্ছে না, উন্নতির কাজ কেন হচ্ছে না? Why aren't we spending our summer holidays over there? We change the way we look at life. This is what we require, I think. Brahmo Samaj apna apni ekdom chanabe utbe. Let's not say that, you are not Brahmo, you are not allowed. Ask them, everyone. Hindu, Muslim, Gujarati, Jat, Sikh, most welcome. What we want to do is to improve the quality of life. We need to start. That is Brahmo.
I'll extend this concept of education and relate it to my own experiences. আমি যখন ছোট ছিলাম আমাদের বলা হতো যে কোনো বিষয় নিয়ে একটু গভীরে যদি চর্চা করা যায়, if we can study in depth. Let me give you 2 or 3 examples. If you look at a different religion, let's say Christianity, there are different sects, there are different categories, there are different periods. But if you look at the period of St. Thomas Aquinas, you will find that there is a serious inquiry into the nature and existence of God. Because St. Thomas Aquinas comes up with what is known as the ontological argument. What is ontology? Ontology is a philosophical doctrine that deals with the nature of existence, how things come into being and how they continue. So just like in Christianity, you have people thinking in depth. Here in Brahmoism, or even as Barun said, you don't need to be enveloped by the rubric Brahmoism to really think deep. One can think about the Brahman, about how the Atman merges into the Brahman, and you could think in that depth. This is one example. So we were taught to think in depth, not just have such superficial ideas. So I think this is something which has been ingrained into me, not to read book covers and talk about the book. Second example is, if I look at my own discipline, that is cinema, we use 3 words which everyone knows. One is cinema, one is film, one is movie. 3টি শব্দ আমরা প্রয়োগ করে থাকি চলচ্চিত্রের ক্ষেত্রে। একটি হচ্ছে সিনেমা, একটি হচ্ছে মুভি, একটি হচ্ছে ফিল্ম। আপাত দৃষ্টিতে এই 3টি শব্দ কিন্তু একই বলে মনে হয়, আমরা প্রতিশব্দ হিসেবে সেগুলো প্রয়োগ করে থাকি। কিন্তু একটু যদি গভীরে আমরা ভাবি, আমরা কিন্তু এই 3টি শব্দের মধ্যে সূক্ষ্মাতি সূক্ষ্মভাবে কিছু তারতম্য আবিষ্কার করতে পারবো। There are certain differences. Look at the word movie first. Movie is a non-formal word. It's not really something which was there in the English language. It was created from the motion picture to movie. So it's non-formal. And which is the country that is so famous for creating these non-formal words? Obviously the United States of America. When Alexander Graham Bell, who is reportedly the inventor of the telephone, although there are some doubts, because there was another Italian who's attributed with this invention, first made a phone call to Thomas Alva Edison. Edison picked up the phone, and what did he say? He said, hello. Now the word hello was not the catchword that you needed to say when someone phoned you. Hello is namaskar, vanakkam. It's just a greeting, like hi. But it became a created word. Now when we speak on the phone, we say hello. So it's again a created word, and it comes from the United States. The United States is also good at one more thing. Right at the moment, of course, they're creating a lot of things that we may not be very fond of, but let's not get into that. But yes, you can, have felony cases against you. You can fool some of the people all the time. You can fool all the people some of the time, and that is enough time to become the president of the United States of America. But that again is besides the point. But the Americans are very good at monetization. Simply invention is not enough. You see, the Lumiere brothers, they invented a machine called the cinematograph. And Thomas Alva Edison is also attributed with a parallel invention. But the monetization happened in the United States. So the word movie obviously has a commercial dimension. So it's slightly different from the other two words. The word cinema has an aesthetic dimension. Because simply having money will not make you make a good film. You need to have the art of it, the aesthetics of it. একটা নন্দনের দিকও তো আছে চলচ্চিত্রে, সেই নন্দনের দিকে ইঙ্গিত করে সিনেমা শব্দ। And the third, which is most important, which is what Barun has been talking about, your film has to relate to society. You live in a society. So film is what gives you that political dimension, that socio-political dimension. কিন্তু এই জিনিসগুলো ভাবতে গেলে একটু গভীরে যেতে হয়। এটা একটা উদাহরণ হিসেবে আমি ব্যবহার করছি আজকে বক্তব্যে। সেটাই শিখেছি। তো আমার মনে হয় ব্রাহ্ম সমাজ নতুন মানুষকে নিয়ে আসতে পারে যদি নতুন লোকেরা আদান প্রদান করে তাদের সঙ্গে, যেমন বরুণদা, যেখানে নতুন কথা বলা যেতে পারে। এবার একটা সরসতার প্রয়োজন আমি মনে করি। যে সত্যজিৎ বাবুর সবচাইতে বড় গুণ আমি বলবো, বরুণদা আমার থেকে ভালো জানেন, তার সংলাপ লেখা এবং এই সংলাপের মধ্যে যে সরসতা মানে হো করে হাসা নয়, একটা হাস্যরসের ইঙ্গিত থাকতে পারে, একটা কৌতূহল উদ্দীপক ব্যাপার। এই কৌতূহল উদ্দীপক ব্যাপারটা কিন্তু সংলাপের মধ্যে থাকে। আমাদের এমনভাবে লিখতে হবে এবং লেখাটা ভীষণ দরকার। যেমন উনি বলেন ইংরেজি শিক্ষাটা দরকার, তেমনি লেখাটা ভীষণ দরকার। It's important to write, and it's important to speak, and it's important to have a sense of humor. Let us not become like dry remainder biscuits. Let's actually bring some humor into the proceedings, even be self-critical, because there are so many stories about Brahmos and Brahmoism, Jani Kintu Bolbola, and so on. So, let's revel in that. What is the harm in being self-critical? I remember a story of Satyajit Ray, which Madhavidi once told me while they were shooting Mahanapur. That time they used to use the trolley. They used a trolley. They didn't have the proper rails. So they had a big plank, and the plank was on wheels. The DOP, Subroto Mitra, he got up and he was quite a weighty presence. Satyajit Ray, 6 feet 2 inches tall, he's there. And we are trolling forward with Madhavi on in spring. As the trolley went, there was a crashing sound and the plank broke. Look, Bangladesh, okay, get it? Satyajit Ray, Subroto Mitra, Bhupodito. He was silence. কেউ কিছু বলতে পারছে না, চিৎকার করে গেছে। সত্যজিৎ রায় নিজেকে ঝেড়ে ঝেড়ে বলে, কি হলো তোমরা হাসছো না কেন? হাসো। So, you can laugh at yourself also. I think we need to bring in, inject this humor also into our discourse. And, which is most important, again thanks to Barun for saying it, let us have a concerted effort to educate ourselves and educate others, learn from others and teach others in a structured manner. We can begin with, as he said, have certain interaction with people, then move out, create a movement, as it were. After the Brahmo Samaj, if you look at the 19th century and personalities that have emerged, they created a movement that was affecting the whole of India. And people even from other disciplines and other religions were taking Brahmos to write their texts. Ramananda Chatterjee was employed by Shamaprasad Mukherjee to write the manifesto of the Hindu Mahasabha, which our great guardians won't even know. So when I submitted a documentary to our dear Prime Minister to make a film on Ramananda Chattopadhyay, he didn't know that the manifesto of the Hindu Mahasabha was written by Ramananda, and so it didn't happen. I submitted the same proposal to the state government, who didn't know who Ramananda was. So we have to educate people, and I would request, as he said, we need to build an awareness about the Brahmo Samaj, and what better way than make a documentary maybe. Pool our resources together somehow and make a documentary and point out that here is a huge contribution which is being forgotten. It was my mother who constantly reminded me, because she used to meticulously observe Mahmud Shah come not only to the Sadharan Brahmo Samaj, but because in the advancing years she would go to the Shambhala Samaj here in Brahman. But go there, and I went to those places myself. It's important to create that movement, and maybe the Adi Brahmo Samaj can take the first step to do that.
Okay. So this carries on, I think, the discourse. But at the end of it must lead to somewhere. It should not end here. This is the pre-opening chapter. আজকাল রয়েছে না আইপিও আগে একটা স্টেজ রয়েছে, আমরা সেই স্টেজেতে রয়েছি এখন। আইপিও হচ্ছে একটা নতুন প্রোডাক্ট বা নতুন একটা কমোডিটি বাজারে আসবে, সেটা আমাদের প্রস্তুতি করতে হবে। That's the most important thing. And again, I harp on that. Let us stop harping. The youth has to be with us. We are found that this old generation. Tomorrow we won't be here. But the youth, they will be the backgrounds. So we have to get there they are. There they are. They're the future of the country. Unless we enlist there is no future for Brahmo, for anybody else. আমি ব্রাহ্ম বলে ওরকমভাবে এখন না ডিসটিংশন করতে চাই না, কেননা ব্রাহ্ম এক্সিস্টেড ফর ক্রিয়েটিং a change, a climate of change in society. সেই চেঞ্জটা কিন্তু সবসময়ই দরকার রয়েছে, because society is constantly changing. You have to do that. With each day, with each generation, we have to change. Brahmo religion also has to change accordingly. We cannot say that we are this, but we are not that. People from other discourses, other religions, other beliefs are most welcome, as long as it is a movement of social change for the better of mankind. That's it.
আমি আরেকটা কথা বলছি, তুমি আমি টাইম
আর 5 মিনিট।
আরো দুটো কবিতা শোনাবো যেগুলো আমি মনে করছি গুরুত্বপূর্ণ আজকে বিষয়বস্তুর প্রেক্ষিতে। আবারও বরুণদের কথা যেটি বলছি যে আমাদের কিন্তু আত্মকেন্দ্রিকতার বাইরে চলে যেতে হবে। ওরা বড় বেশি আত্মকেন্দ্রিক হয়ে গেছি, যুগটাই তো সেই রকম, এখন তো সময় নেই, মানে একটা মুহূর্ত মানে লাইটনিং স্পিডে চলে যাচ্ছে। সেই সঙ্গে আমাদের যে অন্তর্জাল বা ইন্টারনেট, সেইটা আমাদের অনেকটা সময় নিয়ে নিচ্ছে। আমার মনে হয় যে যদি নিজেদের বাইরে আমরা যেতে পারি, আত্মকেন্দ্রিকতাকে বর্জন করে, তাহলে কিন্তু আমাদের ভালোই লাগবে, খারাপ লাগবে না। সেইটা করতে হবে। We need to go outside ourselves. We need not be so self-centered, which we are. We don't have any time for others. Interesting, we don't even have time for oneself. If you think about it, how much time do you give to yourself to actually think? That is what we were taught. We're not getting that. And we're living in a very violent world, not just in this state or in this country, but outside. As Frost put it many years back, he said, in Fire and Ice, some say the world will end in fire. Some say in ice. From what I've tasted of desire, I hold with those who favor fire. But if it were to perish twice, I think I know enough of hate to say that for destruction ice is also great and will suffice. So be careful. এবং শেষ যে কবিতাটি বলে আমি শেষ করব, এটি আমার এক বন্ধু প্রবীর লিখেছেন। বহু জায়গায় আমি এটা উচ্চারিত করি, কিন্তু আমার মনে হচ্ছে এটা গুরুত্বপূর্ণ, বিশেষ করে অরুণদার উপস্থিতিতে। বয়স্ক বৃক্ষের প্রতি, বয়স্ক বৃক্ষের প্রতি আমার কোনো ক্ষোভ নেই, কেননা সে মাটি জুড়ে মেলে গেছে মূলের পেখম, মায়াময় ময়ূরেরই মতো। নিঃশ্বাসে খুলে গেছে বাতাসের জট, শরীরে বয়স এলো। বৃক্ষ তোমার এখনো কি অনুভবে কিছু টান পাও? এখনো কি যেতে চাও আদিম উৎস মুখে? সুখী মানুষেরা যায় মোহনারই দিকে। বস্তুত সুখী মানুষদের প্রতিও আমার কোনো ক্ষোভ নেই, কেননা তারা জীবন ছেঁকে সুখ ফুটে নিতে জানে, মৌমাছি কিংবা পিঁপড়ের মতো। আর আমরা যারা যন্ত্রণায় আছি, জ্যোৎস্নায় কিংবা নদী পার্শ্বে আছি, শ্মশানে কিংবা সুরাগারে আছি, শব্দ ছন্দ চিন্তায় দূরে দাঁড়িয়ে অসুখে নেই, অন্য সুখে আছি। পৃথিবীর তাবৎ আলো বাতাসের সামিল হয়েও বেঁচে আছি বয়স্ক বৃক্ষের